Good morning.
Good morning.
So March 17 Executive Committee meeting is called to order. First, I'd like to ask Alberto to explain how the access to interpretation will work. Alberto?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. We'll begin with the announcement in Spanish, and then we will be back with the announcement in English. To use this, para utilizar el servicio de interpretación, favor de desplazarse a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom, donde aparecen los controles. Haga clic en el icono de interpretación globoterráqueo y seleccione Spanish, español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom, celular, tableta, presione los puntos suspensivos, 3 puntos, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Además, para acceder a los servicios de interpretación de manera presencial, pida auriculares en la recepción. To use the Zoom interpretation feature, please scroll to the bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting controls are. Click on the interpretation icon, world, and select either English or Spanish. If you are joining using the Zoom mobile app, cell phone, tablet, etc., please press the ellipsis, 3 dots, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Additionally, to access English, Spanish, simultaneous interpretation in the room in person, check out a headset from the receptionist. Gracias, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Francesca to take roll, please.
For the City of San Diego, Vice Chair Ela Rivera.
Present.
For the County of San Diego, Chairwoman Vargas.
Present.
For East County, Mayor Vasquez. Here. For North County Coastal, Mayor, Second Vice Chair Huebner. Here. Also for North County Coastal, Councilmember Burkholder. Present. For North County Inland, Mayor Jones. Here. And South County is absent. And we do have a quorum.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and start this meeting with a tribal acknowledgement. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the land we call home. Tribal nations of the San Diego region has historically faced injustices. We acknowledge the harmony that existed between the land, nature, and its original peoples, who have since endured displacement, persecution, and systemic oppression. We pay our respect to the unceded territory and homelands of 18 tribal nations in our region, the most in any county in the United States, from 4 cultural groups, the Kumeyaay, Diegueño, the Luiseño, the Cupeño, and the Cahuilla. This land has nourished, healed, protected, and embraced them for many generations in a relationship of balance and harmony. As members of the Sandiag community, we acknowledge this legacy, and we aspire to learn from Indigenous traditional knowledge and experiences in undoing the injustices of the past. All right. Since this is our first meeting since the board retreat, I want to just take a moment to take everyone who was able to join us, and I'll have a little bit more information to share when we meet at our whole board. But I just wanted to say that I think it was a great opportunity for us to reset and to recommit ourselves to the important work that we're doing here at Sandiag. And I really appreciated the honest conversation. It showed that I think we can really find a space to have we agree to disagree on things, but also have really good discussions about where we want to move the organization forward. So it also showed me that there's a lot more opportunities for us to work together. And so I think we all agreed at the retreat that we're going to work together, really have opportunities to have discussion, and then also really think about how we're moving forward and representing our communities as well. So more to come on that. We're going to be sharing the actual themes and the information that came out of it, but I wanted to make sure we did that today. I think we owe the opportunity to have really good discussion on some of these items to our constituents and to our communities, so that people really see where the different perspectives are coming from. So I'm committed to doing that, and I'm looking forward to the great work that we're going to be doing as we move forward. I wanted to make sure that today's agenda has a lot of really different critical items for the agency. And I hope that we can use some of the tools that we used during our retreat to really make sure that we are thinking about the considerations and recommendations and as how we move forward. And so with that, before we begin the meeting, I just have 2 things that I want to make sure that I announce. We have a hard stop at 10:15. Transportation Committee is at 10:30. And then we're going to have public comment be 1 minute so that we can have enough time to discuss all of the items as well. So Francesca, are there any public comments?
Thank you, Chair. We do have a few on this item. First will be Catherine Rhodes. And then after Catherine, we'll move over to Zoom and start with Anne-Marie.
Thank you.
Hello. Hello, this is Catherine Rhodes, and what I want to talk about is airport revenue and grandfathered airport status that belongs to me and to you. Grandfathered airport were airports that when the FAA did a whole bunch of different things on the Federal Register back in 1982. There were 12 grandfathered airports, but the FAA and FAA staff and airport staff would always try to get rid of this grandfather status. So for example, San Diego International Airport was a grandfathered airport, and Steve Peace made the change in 2003. He specifically made sure that the grandfathered airport status was there. But airport staff said, no, that's not true. And so does the airport district officer in Los Angeles. But they're not the people. The people that matter is the Federal Register, which back in 2021, just 2 years ago, recommitted that not only San Diego is a grandfathered airport, so is New York and New Jersey. New York and New Jersey built the Long Island Railroad. They built a new LaGuardia Airport Transit Station, all using grandfathered airport revenue. We have
I'm
the same.
sorry, your time's expired. and I
Okay,
don't have a
thank you.
timer up there. Thank you. We're going to move on to Anne-Marie Hogan, who will be followed by Blair Bill. Anne-Marie, yourself muted at the moment. You can go ahead and unmute. You can make any comments on your. I think we may be having some technical difficulties. I'm going to go ahead and move on to Blair, and Anne-Marie, I will come back to you. So Blair, if you'd like to go ahead and begin.
So I did unmute again. Can you hear me now?
We can, thank you.
Great. My name is Anne-Marie Hogan, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Association of Local Government Auditors. I'm a retired auditor, and we strongly recommend that you retain an independent in-house staff auditor. Your general counsel and management attachment 4 has these weaknesses: fails to include Alga's strong statement of support for this, fails to include our recommendation the auditor co-source audits when necessary, most significantly confuses the distinction between an internal auditor, which is controlled by management, and an independent in-house performance auditor. SANDAG is required to use government auditing standards, not internal auditor standards. Also, there's an attachment that includes advice from a firm that could bid for the job if the firm decided to contract out. And finally, my research into California cities, which shows that for these cities, when they contract out for government auditing work.
Anne-Marie, I'm so sorry, your time has expired. If you have additional comments you'd like to provide to me personally at clerk of the board, I'd be happy to pass those along for you.
Madam Clerk, can you also remind folks that this is public comment for items that are not on the agenda? I went ahead and it's okay that the person spoke to item, was it 5, right? Just because there's no point in cutting people off in the middle of a conversation, but if people could just make sure that this is only public comment, and if you have an item specifically on the agenda, we'll get to that during that time.
Thank you, Chair. So continuing with, again, the non-agenda public comments, we have Blair Beekman, who will be followed by Ariana Federico, and those are our final 2 commenters on this item. So Blair, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Hi, thank you. Blair Beekman here. After a lot of difficult negotiation and navigation in February at the executive committee meeting, thank you. You're going to have an item today on auditing issues, and you're going to continue to talk about the auditing process and the concepts of accessibility and understanding for ourselves. Thank you. With 40 seconds remaining, I wanted to mention, you have a broadband project going through right now. It's supposed to deliver, broadband infrastructure to tribal regions and just kind of really build up infrastructure. A reminder in the importance of how to invite accountability to all the broadband installers and what all you can do to invite that accountability process. There's interesting stuff you can do. I hope you can do. And how to introduce the concepts of open public policies to the tribal regions with this sort of work. I think that's a really interesting future that I hope we can want to address. Thanks.
Thank you. And our final speaker will be Ariana Federico.
Hi, my name is Ariana Federico. I'm here with Mid-City CAN. I just wanted to reshare about our team. We are looking forward to seeing the pilot plan for 24 and under for young people to have access to youth opportunity passes. We've seen a tremendous amount of success. We hit over 5 million rides within the past month. Young people are really excited to use a program like Youth Opportunity Passes. It really is giving them opportunities to succeed, to participate in their communities, and to really have a sense of belonging in the region of San Diego. Today, I just want to uplift that I hope that folks in this committee continue to center transit-dependent communities because they are the most vulnerable communities that we have. They are not able to be here because most of the time they're working multiple jobs. So I thank you for your time and for your leadership.
And Chair, that concludes the public comment.
Thank you. Do we have any of our executive members? Do you have any non-agenda member comments? Seeing none, we're going to go ahead and move on to the consent agenda. Staff has requested a couple of changes on the draft March 24th, fourth agenda. Celine, can you please share what that is?
Yes, so 3 items. We want to remove the meetings and events report. There haven't been any meetings attended by board members or policy committee members for meeting events. So we're going to take that off the agenda. We're going to push the transit CIP items to April 28th. The transit agencies are still working on their budgets. And then we are going to move the active transportation item to consent because that will allow for more time on the agenda to discuss the draft FY24 budget.
Okay, very good. In addition to those changes, I also like to make some requests related to future agendas. So John, is this a good time for us to do that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So first, I received some requests to add an item related to the 2025 regional plan. So I think that everybody has heard me publicly state a couple of different times that we are not implementing a regional road usage charge. And so I just want to kind of emphasize that again, because I guess there's some misinformation out there on this. And so I want to make sure I put it on the record here at SANDAG as well, even though I think I've said it a couple of times. So I know there's other people who are interested in it. And so I think it's really important as we embark on this plan that the board have an opportunity to give direction to staff and hear from the public about what we're looking for and hoping to achieve. And so because we have so many members, I also think it's important that we have a discussion that happens in a larger context so that we can ask not only for a staff presentation and to provide all of this, but I also want to make sure we have time on the agenda to have full discussion. And so I'm interested in because of the request that was made to give direction to staff to include the regional plan item on the upcoming April 28th draft agenda, because that also gives an opportunity for community to be engaged. And I think it gives them an opportunity to participate in this process. So that will come to the executive committee at our April 14th meeting and then April 28th draft agenda. And so is there any discussion on that before we continue? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Chair. Thank you very much. I really took a little bit of an issue when I heard that you had said specifically that you had directed staff to remove the road user charge from in the future, because that is something that has to be done at the direction of the board of directors. So I'm glad that you are putting this on the agenda. I personally, when I had sent the request to you back on Valentine's Day, I had asked also, so it would be to remove the road user charge from the 2025 update So that's when it would be implemented. So it's not necessarily the implementation. It's actually the taking it out of the framework, making sure that it is not in any studies moving forward. And then also, because those in the 2025 update, that's when we would need to start, adding infrastructure and all of that. But it's also about the managed lanes and the conversion of 800 and plus miles of lanes within current regional arterials and also highway lanes. So it would be those two things. It's not necessarily just the road user charge. It's also for the conversion of lanes to managed lanes
Okay, I mean,
or toll roads, whatever we're gonna call them. We have several different things we call those.
yeah, so I think the discussion, and I don't know how my other colleagues feel, because I want to hear from everybody. But I think that my recommendation is, I mentioned the road user charge because I keep hearing a lot of misinformation. When I said I directed staff on the 2025 is based on the recommendations that all of you, I've been hearing the rest of the board say that. So I just made sure that I made that recommendation to the board on the behalf of all the comments that I've heard from our actual board. So, if that was misinterpreted, completely understand. But I think every one of the items and including, road user charge, any other requests and recommendations that I think the community may have, all those discussions should be part of the regional that we actually have a conversation as a bigger, as what is this regional plan going to look like? It's not, I don't want this and I don't want that. We have a full board that represents 18 cities and unincorporated areas, and everybody should have an opportunity to have that discussion. So what I'm asking for the board to have a conversation on is the regional plan item in general, and then we get to dissect it and we get to have really great conversations. And then we put it to the vote of the community, we hear from the community input, we hear from our board members, and then we come up with a regional plan about what we want to do. I mean, that's how I think the process should work, so that it's a fair process, instead of going in there and saying all these things should not be in there and all of that. So, go ahead.
Well, I really appreciate your approach, because I do think that the conversation needs to be in context of everything, and that we have to include the community. I mean, it's a shame you weren't at the board retreat, because one of the last.
I was sick, yeah.
I'm sorry, you were sick. This is the last exercise we did, was to try and take these puzzle pieces and create a regional transportation plan that looked like a triangle. And it's not easy just to pull out one or two things, and you see the cascading effect that it has on the entire plan, on the entire, all the targets that we have to meet that are put on us by state and federal, and then the work that it entails for our staff. So I think it's very important, with the knowledge that we learned from the retreat, that we take that with us to this discussion that will be coming up executive committee in the 14th, and then the full board on the 28th. So I appreciate that approach.
Any other comments, Susan?
I don't know if it would be possible, but I think it would be valuable if by chance, and I know this is a lot, to have breakout sessions so that we can discuss the regional plan. I really appreciate that opportunity to engage my colleagues and to hear their thoughts at the table. And to
Also do it like the way we did it at the workshop. So
Yes.
it's not just, maybe what we do is we do a workshop on the regional plan. I don't know if that's ever been done before.
Yeah, but the
Who do I
real,
ask? Yeah.
Yes.
We can do whatever we want.
Yes.
Because now that we can get community input, we can get, everybody's participating in
yeah,
that
and
process.
the real value in that is being able to interface with each other, hear the dialogue, and then come
I love
to
that.
a statement that's agreeable upon the folks that are sitting at the table. For me personally, it allowed me to see things from a different perspective, but also to understand the value in open, honest dialogue to come to a consensus. And I think that will help to move this organization forward if we could collaborate just a little bit more
Identifying,
effectively.
yeah, I like that. Yes, sir.
And
Oh, go ahead.
just to quickly add to that, because I love that idea too. We used to do it in sub-regions, but I liked the retreat that we were all from different.
And we all be able to
regions.
work
Yeah, so
together.
we could listen to each other's perspective. Yeah.
Like that, sir.
Yeah, I think the idea of having the conversation in the scope of the full regional plan is essential. The ideas here are great, but there's no single component that we can pull out and have a discussion in a vacuum. there will not be unanimity. I don't believe it. I think it's impossible that there will be unanimity around each component of the regional plan. It's a huge, very complex document that is guided by federal and state guidelines that many of us would probably prefer not be there, but are there. And so we have to have that conversation in the context of the full plan. So I think that it's a really good idea to do that. Otherwise, it's all theoretical. And I don't think we'll actually produce a result that is actionable at the end.
And I don't,
Chair, I would like to add, okay, so I just want to double check. So it's the April 14th here at the executive committee, and then the full board on April 28th. Is that correct?
yes, but because, yeah, I think we can do that and we still do maintain the workshop component. So we would do a workshop on the 28th, workshop on the 20th. Because I think the 14th, we would bring the item, and can you make sure, John, that I'm not speaking out of turn, because I want to make sure I do this right. So the April 14th, we would say, I think it would be an item on the agenda so that we can actually have the actual big conversation on the 28th and make enough time for it and have a dialogue and, right? Am I correct?
Yes, so on April 14th,
Mhm.
you will be considering the agendas for April 28th,
Yes.
that looking out. So on April 14th, you'll be approving the agenda that would call for the workshop on April 28th.
Yeah, I just want to
Okay.
clarify that
Yes.
we're going to be calling for a workshop on the 28th
Yes.
versus we're doing a regional plan that doesn't have this, it doesn't have that, it doesn't have that. I don't want to do that. I think in the spirit of transparency, inclusivity, and accountability, I would prefer that it's a broad enough agenda item that we can bring it forth to the 28th so that we can have a really good workshop and people can participate in that process.
Okay, and
Everybody
Chair, I really do like the collaboration piece. There is one thing that I honestly am going to have to take issue in, that is saying that there's misinformation. The truth is, the regional plan still does have the road user charge in it. We are taking steps. It does have to come back to the Board of Directors before it goes to CARB for approval. And it is in the 2025 update as part of the framework. So I'm not quite sure what the misinformation is, but I think our words are very, very important when
Agreed.
when
Especially when
we're.
people go to Cato Science and say things that are not right. So, but anyway, why don't we go ahead and move forward, because I know we have a time certain. We have a recommendation for the agenda. Is that duly noted, sir?
And also you're going to talk about.
Give me a minute. I'm not done yet. I just want to make sure
That
that
is-
that's done. so I
That is
can
noted.
continue.
I think our clerk has it.
Yeah, everybody's good? All right. So we're gonna move forward to the next item is the Chief Executive Officer's Performance Evaluation item on March 24th. I just want to make sure that because if it's a performance evaluation, we're gonna have that in closed session, but there's gonna be opportunity for community and everyone else to participate in that process, to provide input and so on and so forth. I am my understanding that this is, well, not my understanding, this is common protocol when you're assessing performance evaluation, but there's going to be plenty of.
Chair, I'm so sorry to interrupt. We didn't take a vote on the consent items.
We
We're still on
haven't,
them.
we're having.
Okay,
we're
I thought we were
discussing.
moving on to the next item.
No, what I don't like to do is I just don't, I want to make sure we're clear with one, so we're not coming back to things over and over, so. Trying to run a meeting where people can check things off and then we can move forward. So,
Sorry for the interruption.
no worries. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. And then I know that typically we go dark in August, and so I would like to go ahead and ask that we add that item for the March 24th agenda so that it's actually documented.
Modify your legislative calendar.
I'm sorry?
To modify your
modify.
legislative.
Yeah, so I was almost done. So to change our legislative calendar and cancel the meetings in August so that people can, plan accordingly. And then I also want to make sure that, so now I'm happy to approve the agenda with the change outlined by Colleen, the legislative calendar item addition, and then direction to staff for the April 28th agenda, unless anybody has anything else.
So moved.
I'll second.
Second, okay, have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Thank you. And before I take the vote, I did neglect to mention during our roll call that also with us are ex officio members, Transportation Committee Chair, Councilmember Shu, and Audit Committee Chair, Deputy Mayor Zito.
And also South County came too.
My apologies. And also Councilmember Cardenas is with us from South County. also. Thank you very much.
Madam Clerk, there's no public comment on this.
Thank you. We do have, I'm sorry, we do actually have 3 hands up from the public virtually. It'll be resetting the slide. And Terry, did you want 1 minute for public comments on consent as well?
Moving forward, all of the items will be 1 minute.
Thank you. So we'll start with Alan C. and then go to Anne Marie Hogan. And as a reminder, these comments should be on items on the consent agenda only. So Alan, you can go ahead when you're ready. I'll have 1 minute.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, reasons why I don't think you should have Director Hassan Arada anymore. Del Mar train tracks, been almost a year now. Where's that money? And Fox, you push climate over safety while keeping the toll. And then also, every one of you guys basically pushing climate over toll. Sharon Humphrey, your bus on shoulder in 805, it's a safety risk. All these safety issues, especially that Del Mar train track, over a year now. Where's that money? 300 million the governor set aside. Where is the money? And when are you going to fix that, move that train track and stop wasting our money? There's a stupid mileage tax that nobody can afford. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to say again for the public commenters, right now we're taking comments on the approval of the meeting minutes, the approval of the draft board agendas, and the legislative status report. If you'd like to speak on any other item on the agenda, we'll be taking comments on those items as they are presented. So please raise your hand at that time. So I'll go ahead to Blair Beekman. You can go ahead when you're ready.
All right, Blair Beekman, I wanted to comment on consent calendar item number 4, the legislative status report for the Otay Mesa Port of Entry. You guys have done some amazing work with this item and for the possibility of a trolley from San Diego into Tijuana itself. President Biden has come here a few times to note that. It was really disappointing in his most recent visit that he came to San Diego to talk about submarine things for the future. More submarines, and then went to Monterey Park to talk about gun safety issues. And that is just a disparity that it's incomprehensible to me why he put those two subjects together. We're working towards really important, peaceful, decent things here in San Diego with this Otay Mesa stuff, Otay Mesa things. And I just hope the next time President Biden comes here, he comes in those sort of good terms and goodwill. Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes the public commenters on the consent agenda.
Thank you. All right, now we'll take a vote.
Just gonna get production for that slide.
We give Mayor Vasquez. Mayor Vasquez.
That motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. All right, so we move on to staff report. Oh, wait. Staff reports. At our last meeting, we heard some recommendations from the audit committee and asked staff to come back with more information on questions that were raised as part of the discussion. I understand that the audit committee has also had some additional discussions, and so Chair Cito and Vice Chair Drucker are here to offer any, I think I saw it, yeah, are here to offer any updates on that as well. So let's start with John.
Okay, 2 different items today related to the audit committee, and the first of them have to do with proposed amendments to board policy 39. This is item 5A on your agenda. In this item, the executive committee is asked to review amendments to board policy 39 that were proposed by Sandag's Audit Policy Advisory Committee. The executive committee reviewed these proposed amendments at its February meeting and asked an analysis be prepared, summarize the impacts of the proposed amendments. There are 5 primary categories into which these proposed amendments fall. I will discuss each of the proposed categories with a reference to the specific sections which are proposed to be amended. The first subject is the appointment of the Policy Advisory Committee leadership. And this is section 2.4 of the policy. This is page 3 of the report or page 31 on your PDF. Under the current process, with this and all other policy advisory committees, the Sandag Board Chair appoints the chairs of these policy advisory committees, and This is reflective of their role as advisory to the board of directors and the board's oversight role of all of the policy advisory committees. Under current policy, both the 2 board members and the 3 public members are eligible to be appointed to serve in a leadership role. The proposed amended process would instead have the audit committee vote to select its own leadership from among its board and public members without any input or approval from the board or board leadership. And the chair and vice chair could be all public members. They could all be board members, board member representatives on the audit committee, or they could be a mix of them. The next proposed change has to do with the terms of board members on the audit committee. This is section 4.1.4 of the policy on page 5 of the report, 33 of your PDF. Currently, board members are appointed to a 2-year term with a maximum service of 5 years. Under the proposed change, there's no change in term length, but the maximum service would be increased to 6 years with an allowance to reapply after being out of the committee for a year. The third area has to do with public member terms. This is section 4.2.9, which is on page 6 of the report or page 34 of your PDF. Currently, public member terms are the same as board members with 2-year terms. Again, they can reapply at the end of their term to be reconsidered for reappointment. And there is a maximum overall term of 5 years. The proposed amendment would increase the public member length from 2 years to 3 years. And at the end of their term, they may apply for direct reappointment without consideration of any newly applying public member candidates. Ultimately, too, it allows for no more than 6 years of total service, but again, they may reapply after being off the committee for a year. Additionally, it allows for staggered terms. Terms of sitting members may be increased by up to an additional year. So that would allow a public member to be appointed ultimately for up to 4 years compared to your board members who are appointed for 2 years. And it would have a 6-year total cap on service, and that cap may be waived to allow longer than 6-year service in order to achieve staggering under the proposed amendments. The next area that is addressed is the public member selection committee composition. The selection committee is addressed in section 4.2 and following at page 5 of the report or 33 on your PDF. Currently, the selection committee for the public members is primarily an external screening committee. It is composed of 1 board member appointed by the chair, a finance director of a member jurisdiction outside of Sandag, but one of Sandag's members, and at least 1 outside financial expert appointed by the other 2 members of the screening committee and then confirmed by the board. The proposed screening committee would be composed of a board audit committee member, a public audit committee member, Sandag's current independent performance auditor, and Sandag's CFO. So ultimately a shift from more of an external to an internal focus there. In terms of the selection process that the selection committee would use, under the current process, the screening committee reviews and rates applications with an option for interviews of potential applicants for public members of the audit committee. The screening committee then recommends the best candidate or candidates to the board for approval. The proposed changes to this area would have the screening committee review and rate applications, and then all applicants scoring within 20% of the top ranked candidate would effectively be put into a hat and randomly drawn for a candidate to be submitted to the board for final approval. The last area that is addressed is an additional public member on the audit committee in section 4.2.10, and it would allow the appointment of a prior public member to serve on the audit committee as a non-voting member. It refers to this member as an alternate, and it's unclear what they're an alternate to. They would be the only non-voting advisory member on there, but that is the last area that is addressed. I'm happy to address any of these in detail. Also, I'll call on maybe Chair Zito to offer his comments on these.
With respect to that, no, I mean, we went over it last time, and I think that's a fine summary of the requested changes that came from the audit committee.
Okay. I did have one question regarding the alternate position. would that alternate be able to fill in if maybe one of the regular serving members weren't present?
So my opinion, as it's written, no, it is an advisory member, and just like with your board or any of the other policy advisory committee, an advisory member cannot take the place of a voting member unless they have also been appointed in that place.
I'm sorry.
So it's poorly named. It should just be advisory member, not alternate. Is that?
Yeah, the alternate is perhaps misplaced there.
So maybe we should rename that. If the person cannot fill in the place of someone who's currently has a voting role.
We can put that as part of our recommendations for
Consider that.
consideration. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else that you want to share? Sure.
No, I just think it's worthy to recognize, I won't name them individually, that we do have four members of our, four amazing members of
I
our
think you
WIFA's
should
office
recognize
present.
them because I
So-
think they've done a lot of really good
Well,
work.
two of them just walked outside of a conference, so, but yeah, recognize that they are here because they do amazing work, and I want to make sure that we know that they're present and paying attention. Thank you.
Thank you. So why don't I go ahead to public comment and then we'll come back to board members.
Thank you, Chair. We'll start with the public commenters in the room and start with Councilmember Musgrove, and then we'll go to Catherine Rhodes.
Thank you, Chair. And the performance auditor and our team reviewed significant flaws in our policies governing the expenditure of public funds. It is my belief Sandag would see this as a clear example of why an independent auditor is critical to objectively and dispassionately investigate the organization and report on fundings. It was also an opportunity for Sandag to cite the importance of the performance auditor and use the results as an opportunity to rebuild public trust. Today, Sandag is at a critical juncture. In spite of the legislative mandate and intent of AB 805, there's a suggestion that the auditing structure in place today may be dismantled. It won't be difficult for the public to knit together a timeline of actions and responses. Keep the performance auditor independent, the auditing staff, and keep the public members on a majority of the audit committee and refocus attention to rebuilding the public's trust in Sandag. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Catherine Rhodes, and Catherine will be followed by Doug DePee.
Hello, this is Catherine Rhodes, and the first time I heard anything about that you might not have an in-house auditor that's independent was on the iNews Source report. I read everything, and so I never knew about it until that came out. You know, for myself, you know, back in the day, I would go to the Federal Department of Transportation Office of Inspector General and give them all my complaints, and they said, okay, Sandag needs an actual process where you could give your complaints to, so it could go through some type of process instead of everybody ignoring me all that time. And they said they were going to do an in-house auditor so that my issues would get directly to somebody that's independent. And so I just wanted to make sure that, you know, what Mary said, I think she said the fact that any one member of the board or Sandag management, including the general counsel, knowing the inherent risk and control risk the agency has had and continues to have, and given the amount of federal and public funding types that flow through the agency, would consider an outside consultant over an established internal office, OIPA, should be gravely concerning to the public regarding.
I'm so sorry, but your time's expired.
Thank you. So I'm gravely concerned. Thank you so much.
Next will be Doug DePee, who will be followed by Crystal Carranza.
Good morning, I'm Doug DePete, your Principal Management and Internal Auditor. I've been in the Office of the Independent Performance Auditor for 6 months. I've been in Sandag employee since 2012. In that time, I have been in 5 different departments. This is the hardest working and most cohesive team that I've been on. They care about the quality and accuracy of their work product, and they care about Sandag. They support each other, they want to make Sandag better. Senior management and executive leadership work with this team and the recommendations so they can make Sandag better. Better policies, better processes, better procedures, better controls in place to prevent fraud, waste, and abuse of taxpayer funds. Our next audit will make the headlines, as will audit after that and the audit after that, until such times that our audits won't be that interesting to the media. What does not make the headlines is that Sandag is doing better. There are new P card policies in place. HR put into place a duty statement program. Ray Major meets with our business information and technology services team on a monthly basis and asks them what they have done to improve their processes. It's not the status quo anymore.
Thank you. Next is Crystal Carranza, who will be followed by Michael Ryan.
Hi, my name is Crystal Carranza. I am a associate auditor in the current IPA's office. I've been with Sandag for almost 2 years. My first year was in the contracts department. I came from the Port of San Diego. I can tell you that from both perspectives, there is an urgent need for an independent auditor at Sandag. Our department has been able to find the level of findings only because of the knowledge we have of the agency, the systems used, the knowledge of which processes exist and which don't, and the roles and responsibilities of the agency. The ideas and beliefs I have around encouraging process improvements and providing training are the same I had and voiced while on the management side. On this side, they just hold more weight and cannot be ignored. Our job consists of making recommendations on how to better the agency, but it also requires us to demonstrate examples of why they are needed. I am proud to be on this team and hope that management continues to value our purpose more and uses us as a resource to make enhancements to the agency.
Your next speaker is Michael Ryan, and after Michael, we'll move on to the Zoom commenters and start with Anne Marie Hogan.
Good morning, Executive Committee. I am Michael Ryan. I have been part of the OIPA for the past 3 years. Our work requires us to be truly independent, and that starts at the top. In order to have a properly functioning OIPA, we need a truly independent IPA. Mary being truly independent is what has allowed us to find what we have found and recommend what we have recommended. Our work does not attack Sandag. Our work is meant to improve and make Sandag as efficient as it can be. And for that to continue after she retires, her replacement is going to need to be as independent as she is, as is required by AB 805. Thank you.
Thank you. Next will be Anne Marie Hogan, and after Anne Marie, I'll go to the person with the phone number ending in 899.
Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to speak again. I'm Anne Marie Hogan. I've been a retired city auditor. I've volunteered for 20 years with the California section of the Advocacy Committee Association of Local Government Auditors. And in 2006, I worked closely with the city of San Diego at the request of the city attorney to amend their city charter to establish a more independent city auditor's office. You've heard what I've said are the good things about keeping it in-house, but the weaknesses in attachment 4 from the general counsel and management are: 1, it fails to include ALGA's strong statement of support for the in-house model. It fails to include a good explanation of ALGA's recommendation that the auditor co-source audit when necessary, but manage all the contracted audits. It confuses the distinction between an internal auditor controlled by management and an independent in-house performance auditor. Like most government entities, Sandag requires following government audit standards, which define internal audit.
Anne Marie, I'm so sorry to cut you off there. Your time has expired. Next, we'll go on to the person with the phone number ending in 899, and after that, go to audit committee member Stuart Halpern.
Good morning. This is Mary Davis, and I wanted to absolutely echo what Anne Marie Hogan just said, and all the calls for the auditor to remain internal and independent. As another speaker said, you absolutely are at a critical junction. You need to keep the auditor independent and not beholden to any type of contract situation, given the vast amount of money flowing through your agency. Optics really matter, particularly in light of your past contract creep issues, where the 10 vendors with the highest percentage of changes were awarded nearly $48 million in work, but that total more than doubled over a 4-year period. I have again recall for you to put in an industrial psychologist into your agency, because you don't seem to really get how people think, and that the need for public trust is paramount. You have burned the trust bridge on many times, and so I'm asking you please to do the right thing and give the public an assurance of strong oversight, fiduciary oversight. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Stuart Halpern.
Thank you. The general counsel misrepresented the intent of the public member alternate concept, which is solely intended to mirror the existing board alternate position on the audit committee. Why have an alternate for the board membership, but not for the public membership? Secondly, with regard to the term extension, that is intended to mirror Sandag's board policy to require board members to have 3 years of experience with Sandag in order to serve on the audit committee. You can't expect outsiders to come in with no prior knowledge of Sandag for a term as short as 2 years and be effective members. Additionally, there's almost no jurisdiction that has this structure that has public membership as short as 2 years. Most are at least 3 and more commonly 4. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 3 remaining public speakers. First will be Alan C., who will be followed by Blair Beekman.
Hi, good morning again. Apologies, I spoke earlier on the wrong agenda. I got mixed up. Apologies for that. Yes, the audit must be independent. I disagree with the previous speaker that mentioned 3 years experience in Sandag. No, you need to have outside eyes as an auditing, because how can that person audit if they're entrenched in part of the inside group? So consider that. And there must be a better process where the people actually decide who's going to audit and not who you decide to pick as an alternate, whatever. And this 1 minute speaking time for public speakers, you're going against the Brown Act. It is unsat. You need to give us more time to speak because you're obviously muted, Chair Vargas. I yield back.
Our next speaker will be Blair Beekman, followed by Nina Babiars.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. I just wanted to
I'm sorry, it won't let me know. Sorry, Blair, we're gonna reset your timer.
Oh, a mistake was made. Hi, okay.
Yeah,
Hi,
my
Blair.
apologies. You can start over, sorry.
All right, thank you. Hi, Blair Beekman here. With my limited knowledge of understanding the situation, I'm understanding that there's certain reporting that needs to be done by the auditing office by June. That was talked about at the executive meeting in February. I think a smaller, limited staff that you now have can do the job pretty well, and a smaller group can be a more concentrated group to finish the job that's needed by June. I just thought I would mention those things at this time and what seems like some really difficult issues that you're dealing with right now. And I hope this small advice can be of some help. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. That concludes the public commenters.
Thank you. I wanted to make sure that we heard from, I know that from public comment on item number 5, there's 2 subsections of item number 5, 5A and 5B, but I wanted to make sure we heard from folks because I know that people have different, some people spoke up to both of the items and some people spoke to one. So we have that. So we're going to go ahead and move forward and address item 5A first, and then we're going to go ahead and address 5B. Then I'm going to ask council to go ahead and do a presentation on 5B so that people can have a presentation, but to share with us the findings based on our request. And so the first item is 5A, the proposed amendments to Sandag Board Policy number 9, and you had some comments, 39, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. First, thank you, Chair Zito, for your work on this and the audit committee. This is probably applicable to 5A and 5B, so I'll just say it now. I want folks from the independent budget analyst office to know I really appreciate the work, the auditing work. That is really, really important. I also want to distinguish between the work that's done by the auditors, and even the audit committee as a whole, and the actions of individuals who want to politicize that to attack the agency. So that's unfortunate because your work should not be interpreted as an attack on the agency. That does not, however, mean that your work cannot be weaponized to attack the agency. So I want to draw that distinction. I have never thought that the folks who do the work are trying to take down the agency in any way. I do, however, have concerns at times that work is being weaponized at the detriment of the agency without the goal of strengthening it over the long term. I just wanted to draw that distinction. So with respect to 5A, thank you for the recommendations. I think these are prudent. They make a lot of sense to me. I think that the questions asked by Mayor Vasquez and the comments made by Vice Chair, Second Vice Chair Huebner are important as well. So with that, what I'd like to do is make a motion, Chair, to bring these recommendations forward as part of the as part of the annual review of board policies, and include these recommendations as part of that update when they come forward to the full board.
For a second.
Before we get to a second.
Well,
I just-
let me get a second and then we can get a discussion just for process. Is there a
I'll have
second? Okay, go ahead, ma'am.
I just want to make sure that that alternate position that's mentioned truly is an alternate position and that it mirrors the board where that person can be a voting member. I think that's important and it's critical to ensure that there's always a quorum in doing the business of the audit committee. Is that possible?
My, well, so my read on that would be that would be a discussion that we would have. So, because there would be a proposed change to the actual process, right?
Well, to an extent, really, under board policy 39 right now, there's no prohibition against appointing an alternate, either board member or public member, to the extent that you have enough applicants for those positions.
Thank you so very much. I think that's important to ensure the integrity of the committee, because at the end of the day, we know that it's important that we look at data and the facts and be as transparent as we possibly can as an agency. And that will be the steps that are necessary to build trust with the people that we serve.
Maybe that's just to clarify. So there's a distinction between there's no prohibition on it and it being explicitly mentioned as something that can and or shall be done. Is your recommendation that the language clarify that there shall be an alternate or maybe an alternate? Because with your recommendation, I'm happy to incorporate that into my motion. So that when the recommendations come forward to the full board for review, they incorporate the recommendation that you're making.
I think it shall be.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so
And I have one other.
You accept them?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yes, and the other thing
I'm
is.
just trying to make sure we follow.
Yeah, one other thing for discussion coming up by the board is maybe perhaps a consideration, if this is allowed by law, to increase the number of members. So, because right now, I think there's a difficulty in complying with the Brown Act on the audit committee. If board member perhaps wants to make sure that when they speak with somebody, they're speaking with a public member, but then they can't speak with their vice chair. So then that's a Brown Act violation because it's 3 of them. So if it was increased by 2 other members, that might also solve the problem of the staggered terms that we need to comply with, we need to get to. So perhaps we might add that to the consideration.
The issue there is that while you have a lot of discretion to work within kind of the box that your governing statutes define, governing statutes, as they talk about the audit committee, say the audit committee shall be composed of 5 members.
Oh, it does.
Very
in AB
prescriptive
805.
there. In AB 805. Now, if you want to pursue that as a legislative change, you could certainly pursue that, but not through board policy.
I think got more important things.
I read that thing several times and it does say that, yeah.
Okay, so much for that idea.
Chair, I had actually pushed my speaker button, but I guess maybe they're not working, so maybe I'll just jump right in. I wanted to, I know at the last audit committee meeting, and I do like the changes. At the last audit committee, because my understanding is this is moving forward, this is not currently with the audit committee right now, with the members right now that are going to be leaving the board, is that correct?
Do you mean would it have retrospective impact
Correct,
on them?
yeah, with the members today.
It generally, the way that laws or policies apply, they do not apply retroactively.
And that was my understanding. I just wanted to hear you say that. So Chair, if I could maybe offer a suggestion and possibly a friendly amendment. Currently, there is a committee that is made up of 2 board members. There are public members that are going to be leaving because they are termed out. And what and they're the recruitment folks. That is Bob Monson and Stuart Halpern. And so what I think would be a great thing as part of this this action today to move forward to the full board to take a vote on this is to make sure that they could see through the because what the audit committee and maybe Chair Zito could help out on this, and thank you for being here today. I really appreciated your time. Is that you voted to keep them on as the recruitment team past their terms expiring, correct?
So, yeah, I mean, what we technically voted on was putting forward a request to be able to ask the executive committee and the board to grant a waiver on board policy, not to grant a waiver, to come up with a mechanism that will allow them to extend their terms. And I do, this one actually touches both this topic and the next topic, which is if we could extend their terms, then maybe, I don't know what the timeline is for the process that Chair Vargas just, or I'm sorry, the Vice Chair recommended to go to the annual review, but that's probably going to be too long. So then that would then turn into a second request. Could we actually bring something forward more quickly than that to extend their terms so that they could, one, participate in the recruitment of a new IPA, but then 2, also potentially, if we do make some changes to this policy, that would apply to the members that were replacing the current public members. I would assume, I had originally been thinking that 4 months would probably be good, but then just hearing the beginning of this and realizing that we're all probably going to be dark in August, that could land right in the middle of trying to replace those members, that maybe it should be a 5-month extension that we'd be looking
Just to
for.
clarify, the going dark on August is specifically for the board,
Right.
not for the audit committee. I mean, committees can still meet if they want to. I mean, that has been my experience in the past, unless that's something different.
However you want to set the audit.
Understood, but any
Yeah.
audit committee action still has to be approved by the board. So it could, there could be a delay there because of that. We can't appoint a public member. We can only make a recommendation and that gets approved by a board. So anyway, 4 months would be probably appropriate, but if the August is going to slow us down, then maybe 5 months. But to go ahead and do that, and then that would have to just be brought before the board and approved before May 15th, which is when their current terms expire, in order to make that work. And I also wanted to mention to the Vice Chair, I truly appreciate the comments you made at the start. Those are very salient about the difference between the independence and the weaponization. And I think it's worth pointing out that the weaponization that has happened actually makes the work of the committee that much more difficult as well, and the work of the OIPA that much more difficult, because people don't want to then share information necessarily because they think, anything that's going to happen is going to be weaponized. So turning this into a political bowling ball or beach ball or whatever you want to call it, just makes it that much harder for everybody to get their job done. And it's an unfortunate side effect. So hopefully we won't see as much of that coming up. But regardless, so going back, the request would be to, in the more near term, try to figure out how we can extend those 2 members' terms, and then happy to continue to work with you on the other recommendations.
Yeah, thank you for that. So I think what actually would make a lot of sense is to untie those 2 things.
Mhm.
So rather than incorporate it into my motion, there's, I think, 2 options that we probably have. One is to make my motion have 2 components. The first, to bring forward the recommendations for changes to board policy 39 as part of the comprehensive update to board policies that'll come before the board. And secondarily, extend I think we have to waive the policy.
That's right. This is something that terms are not defined at all by law. So it's only in board policy, and you have, the board ultimately has the authority to waive board policy.
So why don't we do 2 motions? Are you okay if we do 2 motions?
Yeah, as long
Offered a
as
friendly.
we vote on, I just know time is of the essence, and if for some
I think we're
reason,
good.
we just want to make sure that we got that committee in place.
And I think for purposes, I was hoping that you were going to share some of this, so maybe I probably should have had a conversation. I mean, I know we've had conversations, but I know that our auditor has asked to extend her time to her initial retirement was going to be June, and now she has extended, has asked for an extension to
Yes.
October, which I think is fine, not a problem. So I think that gives us a little bit, I think we're working on a different timeline than we were
Yes.
working before. And so I think we're in a good space to do that, not a problem. And so let's go ahead with the first motion, if everybody is okay with that, unless there's other discussion, and then we can move the other item forward. Does that work?
And this is under 5A, and then 5B will be.
Well, what we'll end up doing is we'll do a 5A, and then we'll do a separate motion
Got it.
that was not on here,
Okay.
and then we'll go to 5B. Okay, all right,
The
just
auditor does have her hand up and wants to speak,
to this item.
and she wants to speak to this item and B, A and B.
Okay. What happened? She didn't get on the other, go ahead.
Hello, good morning. Thank you for hearing me really brief on 5A. I did have my hand up. I just want to thank you all for working together on this and being so accepting of it. I think it's a great move, some really good changes, brings more independence and more transparency to the agency. And I just think it's awesome to hear you all agree on this matter. It's a really good feeling. And just to say, I'm so proud of my staff. So that's all I have on 5A. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from members? We have a motion? Okay. go
Just
ahead.
a
Okay.
really quick, one thing I did want to mention, when this first came up, we asked to tap the brakes a little bit, and that was politicized as well. And I wanted to note that because there wasn't any malicious intent. No one was trying to do anything shady. We wanted to get our feet planted so that we could comprehend what was in front of us, have this board have an opportunity to responsibly review it and consider it. And for the health of the board, the executive committee, the agency as a whole, if there can not be an assumption when folks ask for some more time to review things, that anyone's trying to do anything besides govern responsibly, I think that would definitely be in the best interest of everyone. So I just wanted to add that because we're putting forward a motion that doesn't in any way whittle away the recommendations that came from the audit committee. We just have had a chance to digest it more, to have legal review of those recommendations. Wanted to provide that additional context. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome. And so I actually had some comments that I was going to use, that I was going to talk about in item number 5B that are very related to that. Yesterday, I went to our ethics and compliance fair at the County of San Diego. And I'm hoping that that's the kind of environment that we're going to be able to build at Sandag, right? I mean, everybody was super excited and we had a fair, we had a presentation. And I think in the end, good governance is really about transparency, inclusivity, openness, and really making sure that the public has an opportunity to share. And then the other piece of it is the follow-up, right? Which is something that I'm very much interested in. And I've been talking to the team and to Hassan about is so audit makes a lot of recommendations. You have, how do we keep track of this? What is the role of the board, right? You have an independent audit committee, you have so how do we make sure as the fiduciaries of this agency to make sure that we have the tools that we need so that these recommendations are actually implemented? And I think that's one of the biggest roles that we have as a governing board to be able to do that. And so I'm really actually excited and looking forward to. I have all sorts of, logs and templates that I have been exposed to as a board member of an agency like CalSTRS, where we manage $285 billion. And we had about, a 10-hour audit committee where all members participated in. We had only 13 members. So, my experience has been a little bit different, and I'm really excited about some of the stuff that we're going to be implementing. And I really appreciate not only the audit committee and the OIPA, but I also want to say thank you to the Sandag staff who has been in a really short amount of time trying to catch up with all of these changes, because I think that's the other piece that's extremely important, that this is a three-pronged process. It's not the audit committee versus Sandag versus the Sandag staff versus the board. It really is all of us having to come together to try to identify what are those policies that are going to make us a solvent institution so that we can actually do the work of the constituents that got us here. So I appreciate your comments. And so we have a motion and a second. Please vote on the first item.
Thank you. That motion does pass unanimously.
Fantastic. Okay, so now the second item is the 5B is the Sandic Independent Performance Auditor. And again, I
Sorry,
think.
Chair, I thought we were going.
Oh, sorry. No, I'm gonna go ahead and do the A, B, and then we'll do the third one. Oh, right? Can we do that? Or do you want to do, because that one is, okay, go ahead and, yeah. All right, do you want to make the motion?
Well, I would make the motion that we would have, are we calling it an extension or what are we calling it?
Yeah, extend the terms of.
Extend the terms for the sole purpose of making sure that we have that committee, the recruitment committee in place throughout it, which is for Bob Monson and then also Stuart Halpern. And so anyway, that'd be my motion.
For 4 months,
Extend
right?
this. 5 months, I think is what he ended up saying, just in case.
I think that's fine, 5 months, yeah.
Okay, that's my motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other additional discussion on that? All right, please vote. All right,
That motion also passes unanimously.
great. All right, the next item on the agenda is 5B, which is the Sandic Independent Performance Auditor. I just wanted to say thank you for all the great work on this. And so if you can just, I'll turn it over to you so you can present some of that information.
Thank you very much. In item 5B today, the executive committee is asked to discuss and provide a recommendation to the board regarding the preferred alternative for staffing the Sandag Independent Performance Auditor position. And just to be very clear, what we've done since your February meeting is to gather the information that you have requested in order to help you make a recommendation here. In gathering this information, we're not making any recommendation to you to decide or recommend one way or another. We just want to give you information to make the most informed decision that you can. Specifically, the information that you requested focused on the statutory and policy requirements for fulfilling the independent performance auditor position, the potential benefits and risks for outsourcing the independent performance auditor function, and examples from other agencies about how those agencies approach the performance of an independent performance auditor function inside those agencies. You also asked for information on the potential timelines for hiring an external consultant firm to fill the function versus the timeline for recruiting and hiring an individual to serve as your independent performance auditor. You had also requested information and analysis on each of these points to be provided and to give you, again, a basis to form a recommendation. And those are included in the staff report. I'm not going to go through every one of those. We've included a lot of information there. I'll also note that, as stated in the report, recognizing the need for expediency in this process, board leadership has directed staff to initiate a procurement for an executive search firm to assist in the recruitment of an internal employee, an individual to serve as the next IPA. That request for offers has been published and has been sent to 35 firms. Those procurement activities will continue only to the extent that they're consistent with future board direction, however. Also attached to your report today is an analysis of the audit committee on the subject. I'll turn it over to Chair Zito and invite him to address that information and their recommendation. And our team is available to answer any questions that you have, either to go into the information in the report or any other related items.
Thank you, John. Yeah, we just, last time we came with a recommendation, but probably didn't do our due diligence of actually backing it up with data. So I just want to make sure that, the data that the audit committee used was presented. And so we put that in as an attachment to the staff report. And I think what it's showing is just some of the resources, which were similar to the resources that were referenced by staff that were applicable. Did a little bit of a cost analysis of the audits that Sandag has done while the OIPA's office has been there. So you can see, at least with respect to the dollar amounts of what you're getting per finding and per recommendation of an internal function versus an external function. And then also just noting that all of the other local or, a lot of the other notable local regional agencies in San Diego are doing a similar structure as we have today. And I think it's worth acknowledging that I don't think there's anything that is truly solely internal. Staff brought up this hybrid approach, and clearly we're already using a hybrid approach because we have other audits that aren't driven necessarily by the OIPA's office. And if we needed to actually adopt something that was not within the area of expertise of our team, such as an IT audit, we would want to go outside for such a thing to get that level of expertise. It should be managed by the OIPA's office, but there are clearly times when external firms are appropriate. But we do think that it's very important still for the data that we've put in here to keep the office internal. I did also want to point out, just for clarity and make sure we have accuracy in our staff reports, I had a public member of the committee reach out to me and say that they actually think that the Orange County item in the staff report may not be correctly represented, that they actually do believe they have an internal office still with a budget of about $3 million, and that they do contract out a lot of their audits, but it does still go through that internal office position. But I haven't tried to verify that myself. I just had a public member of the committee reach out to me and wanted to make sure that that was clarified for that one particular item in the staff report. Thanks. Happy to answer any questions.
All right. I really appreciate all of the work and the pros and cons. And I think to your point, right, we wanted to make sure we got information. And so I think that'll be helpful, particularly to all of the new board members. So I am in favor of making sure that we have an individual or an internal person as part of this process. So I'm happy to make that motion.
Second.
Okay. Any other additional discussion on this?
We don't have any speakers?
Oh, I don't know. Oh, I forgot.
Oh, sorry. I thought we would have speakers before we start voting.
No, I just made a mistake.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
That's why I said I made a mistake. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah.
But you talking about public comment?
Yeah. I thought
You-
there would be
you
public
heard
comment.
items on
I already
five, right?
heard these items. Yeah.
People spoke to 5.
Yes. Remember?
Oh, I'm sorry. Because when I had contacted our outside independent auditor, I said, what are your thoughts on this? She had told me that she was speaking about this. And then when she spoke, she said, I'm speaking on 5 and then A, and then I'll be speaking on 5B. That's why I was asking if she was on Zoom or something. I don't know if she's still there.
Well,
Yes,
I think what the process here is a little bit confusing because I don't think the auditor should be speaking in public comment. I think the auditor should be part of the conversation as part of a presentation. So I'm not really sure. I was never asked, just to be put it on the record. The auditor never asked, or at least the chair, through the chair of the audit committee, it was never asked of us to put the auditor as part of a presentation. I think in the future, for clarification, my experience in previous boards, and we do this at the county and every other board that I serve on, if someone from internally would like to speak, they do it as part of a presentation. We allocate some time for them and they put a presentation. So we can do that in the future. I don't think that 1 minute for you to be able to just kind of put things together is probably the best way for you to share your information. So I think that's a process issue. So I'm going to recommend to
Point
the
noted.
chair that in
Yeah.
the future, when anybody from audit, right, wants to speak, just please let us know and we'll put it as part of the presentation. Process is, I think, the most important thing, and it helps us so that there's not all this confusion. It's weird that the auditor is speaking in public comment. It makes sense. So let's go ahead and do that and follow the processes. That's what we started today. And I want to be fair to everyone.
Thank you.
Can she hear me?
Can I speak?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, I did inform Chair Zito that I was going to be here and prepared to speak. I have spoke to Mayor Jones and did tell her that I performed an analysis on the analysis that was performed and wanted to point out a few things. So I don't know if you would like to hear those or not, but I do have information to share. It shouldn't take too long, but I do agree with you. I shouldn't be a public member. I should be part of the discussion. And I was under the understanding that Chair Zito was going to inform you that I was here and that I was going to.
Next time, go ahead and just, reach out to me. Mayor didn't share that with me either. So, process is, as the chair, you feel free to reach out to me anytime, like you did with your request to expand, to extend your your role, right? To, so you CC'd me, feel free to do that in the future, anytime.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. So can I proceed or do we have
So I'll
time?
give you 3 minutes so that you can go ahead and do a presentation if that works for you.
Well, I just wanted to point out a few things. The analysis around the analysis. The analysis focused on the sole effort to support the law rather than really stating the actual law. I noticed that AB 805 wasn't even attached in the supporting documentations. The analysis tends to be made up of legal jargon that provides information overload rather than discussing the letter of the law. Board Policy 39 is not the law. It's actually the interpretation of Board Policy AB 805, and it was interpreted incorrectly. A copy of AB 805 should have been included. Overall, the analysis sways away from the Plain Writing Act of 2010, which requires that the government agency write in plain, simple, and to the point language. By overloading information and overwhelming the recipients or readers, you leave them with no choice but to simply act on or accept the information. I'd like to address and clarify a few points in the presentation that was misunderstood or maybe misinterpreted. The analysis includes documents that discuss the internal audit function, but not an independent audit function. Considering SANDAG had an internal but not independent for 20 years who did not present many control and operational findings as my staff has done, it is important that we focus on the need for an independent audit function. The General Counsel's office noted cost-saving benefits, but only for outsourcing. He didn't discuss the benefits for an internal office. The General Counsel comparisons of agency includes agencies that are not relevant to SANDAG. However, the agencies used by the audit committee's comparisons are. The comparison of ITOC is an oversight of one function, and it actually is not an audit, it's agreed upon procedure. The analysis that provides outsourcing risk and benefits, however, failed to provide the risk and benefits of the internal audit office, which is what you asked for, I believe, during the executive committee meeting. An unbiased analysis should include both pros and cons of all options and not just the preferred option. Contracting with the audit firm presents a potential for conflict of interest and failed controls. If management is allowed to directly manage or control the selection of the audit firm and also authorize invoice payments to compensate the firm, is there still independence? I would say no. Would the board seek to contract with an additional consulting firm to look over the other firm and pay those invoices? The analysis incorrectly states that there is no language or guidance in law that speaks to staffing. That's stated on page 41 of the PDF. However, this information can be found. In fact, it was the very next sentence that was left out by the General Counsel's office. The address that addresses the actual law. AB 805 clearly states that an independent performance auditor should be hired, not contracted, as a firm would be. The law is clear in stating that the firm is allowed for the financial audits to be contracted. The difference here is that the reference to the IPA is that the IPA would be hired, not contracted. If we go to the analysis that cited States versus HVI Cat Canyon, which states that we should interpret hiring with its usual and ordinary term. Therefore, we should interpret the term as SANDAG uses it. SANDAG hires individual employees and contracts with firms. If the argument is that the definition of hiring could also be used to refer to a contractor, then the question would rise is why does AB 805 make a notable difference in stating that a contract to a firm for financial statements while we hire an independent IPA? Additionally, in section AB 805 that was left out of the analysis that states the law, the IPA has the power to appoint, employ, and remove, assist employees and personnel as deemed necessary. If SANDAG interprets and authorizes a firm to take this role, then by law, a firm would have the authority to appoint, hire, and fire staff of OIPA office as they see fit. Is SANDAG's intent to allow a firm to have such power over a SANDAG employee? I am concerned and perplexed as to why the important or excluded references in this analysis. I believe that all board members likely have a good general understanding of government and expectations around accountability and transparency to understand the importance of supporting the recommendation to hire, not contract, an independent auditor, particularly around the agency like SANDAG. I've got, I'm,
Your 3 minutes has expired.
wow, okay, thank
I'm
you.
I'm sorry, Chair. She's like part of the presentation.
Can I
don't-
just,
It's good. Go ahead.
yeah, the motion, I just want to like level set here. The motion is to move forward with the hiring of an internal auditor. There's no conflict here. I'm gonna be honest. I want to, one, as a board member, I don't think I was just subjected to information overload. I think I serve with smart and intelligent people who are more than capable of digesting what was presented to us. The motion before, again, that was put forward by the chair, was to move forward with the hiring of an internal auditor. Literally the same recommendation that came to us. This is unnecessary, in my opinion. I feel a little bit defensive of staff now because there was some subjective analysis of what was given to us. I didn't think it, now granted, I went to law school. I didn't think it was overloaded with legal jargon. I will also say that there is included in potential risks to outsourcing, potential higher spending. The transaction costs can be higher than anticipated, or diluted control can lead to mission creep. Lack of competition also can lead to opportunism. That seems like a very, very straightforward analysis of potential risk to outsourcing. We've digested that information. The chair made a motion to move forward with the hiring of an internal auditor. All of this seems, I'll be honest, excessive. And I think an example of some of the unnecessary conflict that's being produced between in a process that is supposed to strengthen the agency. And what I'm watching right now doesn't seem to be doing that. And again, given that the motion put forward is to move forward with the hiring of an internal auditor, I think it would make a lot of sense for us to have a discussion on the motion.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to be clear, Mary, I did say that we were gonna give you 3 minutes, right? And in the future, we're happy to, if you are interested in, we can have a future discussion on all that. And again, Chair, if we can make sure that we are following the process, it would be fantastic. So I appreciate your feedback. I appreciate everything that you've presented. I think that we have a motion and a second. And so is there any additional discussion?
I do, Chair. So first of all, I've read and reread many, many times AB 805. I actually am also not sure why it wasn't part of the packet. I don't even know how it even got to our control that we're saying, oh yeah, now we're going to make a decision on whether we're using an outside firm or whether we're having an independent in-house auditor, because it clearly states in AB 805 that the audit committee makes the decision and then we basically codify it as in approve it. Like, I don't even know how we're involved in this process. That's the part that honestly concerns me. And based on some of the things that our independent in-house auditor has said today, I'm a little concerned about that. And I actually have a question of our legal counsel. So do you work for Sandag specifically, or do you work for the board specifically? Because when I talked to my city attorney about this, and I said, I don't understand, like, I don't feel like some of the parts of our board policy 39 actually are from AB 805. I feel like it conflicts. And she said, well, I work, specifically for you as a city council. You hire and fire me, and you're the governing body. I'm not sure.
Just a quick point.
So, yeah, I think this is I think it's, we have a motion and a second. The item that we're discussing is whether or not we're going to have an independent auditor or external. The motion before us is to accept the independent auditor. Any questions that you may have about the status of any of our employees, you are free to, I'm happy to ask that request of our CEO and provide you with any feedback, because I think that's the appropriate thing. I think it's actually inappropriate to be asking legal counsel to tell us who he works for at this time. So, because that's not the item on the agenda. If you have any concerns, feel free. We're happy to talk about it.
I actually would like for us to get an outside independent.
Happy to have that conversation at some point.
Legal
But the
opinion
item-
about
the item-
this item specifically.
Well, there is the item before us was not a request from legal counsel to give us an opinion on anything. It was for them to provide objective information on both of those opportunities. You have a new board of directors of SANDAG. Interpretation of ABA 05 is interpretation of ABA 05. We asked for information. The information was provided by legal counsel to our committee. We've had a discussion. There's a motion and a second. So I suggest we go ahead and take a vote because we have some items on the agenda that we have to move forward to. So I'm going to go ahead and call the question. Please vote.
That motion does pass with 5 yeses and 1 no.
Fantastic. All right. So then the next item on the agenda is item number 6, which is the fiscal year 2024 SANDAG program budget. I'm going to turn it over to the team.
Okay, very good. So I will just kick this off. We have a very brief PowerPoint to run through with you. Recommending the draft budget is probably one of the most important things that the SANDAG Board of Directors is asked to do every year. And the draft is in front of you today. And it's actually really a work plan that breaks up into 4 major categories. So the first is the planning part of the program. So the first part is the planning, so that includes all the data analysis and planning work that we do. The second piece of the program is our capital budget. So that's where all the projects fit in. So when you think of the low sand corridor improvements that we're making on Interstate 5, that's the capital part of the budget. The third part of the budget is our operations. So those are things like the operation of the I-15 managed lanes or the State Route 125. It's our van pool program, our TDM program. And then the fourth part of the budget is the administrative portion of the budget. So that's where we have HR, it's the board budget, it's all of those kind of administrative functions. So it's those 4 functions and they cover about $1 billion. So if you can just go back to that first slide that showed the 3 columns, about 70% of the budget, back, there we go. So covers your mandates. So this is making sure that we're meeting all the laws that are required of us as an MPO, as a San Diego Regional Consolidated Agency, and our role implementing Transnet. So there are certain things, about 70% of the budget is there. A big part of that also is a huge slice of this budget that is passed through to transit agencies and to all of you as local governments. Go to the next slide. What we have is laid out the priority projects. We've talked about those. I'm not going to go through them in the interest of time here. Next are the priority programs, key initiatives. So these are the key initiatives going forward in the FY24 budget. With that, I'll turn it over to Andre to really talk about how the funding breaks down and where the funding sources come from.
Thanks, Colleen. So our budget this year is a total of $1.2 billion, which is approximately a 15% increase from last year, which was just over $1 billion. And you can see from the chart over here, the capital projects is the majority of our budget, approximately 49%. And then there's a big chunk that is the Transnet 0.5% sales tax that we are responsible for, that we actually allocate and pass on. Some of it stays here in-house, which is the smallest portion, the 35.7 million, which is the administrative portion for the admin, as well as the bike program. The other piece, which is the debt and capital piece, that's to service our principal and interest for our $2.5 billion debt program. Some of it goes to capital. And then the other piece, which is the biggest piece, is what we actually pass on to our member agencies, to our cities, as well as to the transit agencies. And then the other portions of our budget, as Colleen described, our overall work program, and that is our actual planning program. Next is our regional operations and services. That includes the SR 125, the I-15, ARGIS, and the criminal justice. And then there's a small piece there for the board budget. Now, just focusing on the actual major program revenue for our major programs, OWP, capital operations. Just what we wanted to get out of this chart is that between federal and state, we get approximately 79% of our funding sources. 11% is Transnet. The other small piece, which is the other local funds, is our member assessments as well as our TDA. So it just goes to show that we're doing a great job here, leveraging our local funding to get state and federal funds. So with that, I'm just going to turn it over to Ray to.
We can go through these quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I want to make sure that I share with everyone, not only the folks who are listening in public comment, but I mean, who are out there listening, but also to my colleagues, is that I've actually asked the team to give us a very thorough presentation. This one is a little bit more, it's shorter, right? Because high level perspective, but I really want to make sure that the public and the rest of the board members, particularly the new board members, have an opportunity to take a deeper dive. And the importance of having it today is that it becomes part of the, the public gets an opportunity to really take a deeper dive, be able to ask some tough questions, and it's going to be a $1.2 billion budget. So I'm not trying to stop what you're saying right now. I just want to make sure that everybody understands that this is the big level perspective just for the executive committee. And then it becomes public, and then we have an opportunity to hear from the rest of the folks who actually can take, can ask a lot more questions about some of the specifics on this. So I apologize for interrupting you, but I want to make sure that I share that with everyone.
No, I appreciate that, Chair, and that's exactly, I mean, we'll be back, like the timeline here shows, after the executive committee today, we're taking this to our social equity working group, and then next week to the board of directors. At that meeting, there'll be 10 of us directors presenting on our projects and programs. So we'll give a lot more detail at that presentation. Then we'll be coming back in May with the final proposed budget to both the executive committee and board of directors for approval. So what we're looking for you today is the recommendation is that the executive committee is asked to authorize the distribution of the draft 24 program budget to member agencies and other interested parties for review and comment. And we recommend that the board of directors approve the draft fiscal year 24 program budget.
Yeah, and I think it's really important that we are planning for community input. And one of the things that I was reminded of during the presentation around the budget at our retreat was that only 30% of our budget is flexible. The other 70% are mandates that we have to comply with. So why don't we go ahead and, I mean, is there anything?
I think we'll be open for questions. I know that we're
Okay,
limited on
so why don't we
time.
do this? Let's go ahead and do public comment, and then board members can have, I'll turn it over to the board members.
Thank you, Chair. We have two public commenters on this item. We'll start with Catherine Rhodes and then go to Alan on Zoom.
This is Catherine Rhodes. In 2019, almost 4 years ago, Sandag had a meeting or press conference where they're saying they're going to get $350 million from the San Diego County Regional Airport Authority. To date, they have zero. So that $350 million turned out to zero. The reason for that is because there's a lack of political will. That's it. It's all political will, and you guys are failing on that. And how you're failing is that in 2021, just 2 years ago, the FAA did a memo on the availability of passenger facility charges to be used for transit off airport, not necessarily only to the airport. And what that does is open up billions, not just millions, but billions, not 350 million. That's chunk change compared to what you can have from the airport. You can have billions. In fact, before the airport and the port split, you used to actually have the billions. Sandag was in control of the budget for.
Catherine, your time is expired.
Thank you so much.
We'll go to Alan next. Alan, you can begin when you're ready.
Hi, thank you. Anybody see irony here? I quote the chair. 1 minute is not enough time to speak. No to approving budget, stop tax waste of yet more expensive, useless consultant studies. You were hired since 1987 Transnet to add road lanes. Added to them now. Electric car takeover will need roads, not more empty buses. During COVID, so many businesses were forced to close, yet the tax was never paused. How about tighten your belts instead of wringing out more of our paychecks? As I yield back, will the board yield and stop wasting our paychecks? Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. I would like to make a motion to approve the recommendation that the board of directors approve the budget and also that we authorize distribution of this budget to stakeholders and other members of the board.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Awesome.
Second, any additional discussion?
I have some discussion, Chair. When this comes back, I think we definitely need more information. So on page 10, which is 74 on the agenda, it states that in 2023, we will start the environmental documentation process for the Central Mobility Hub. I don't even think that we have actually approved a final location for that. So I would like to, before we vote on moving forward to do environmental, we need to know and we need to have a discussion and vote on where that's going to be. So I would like that to happen. And then on the Losan Del Mar Bluffs, I want to make sure that we're on the same page with North County Transit District, being that that's their rail line. And then on the smart corridors, I want to make sure that we find out ahead of time what these pilot projects are. If there's something like BEEP, which I actually had spoken about with a Sandag staff member, things like that, I would totally think would be good if we're talking about the transit leap or smart corridors. But if we're talking about managed lanes and moving toward pilot projects with that, I think that's a much bigger discussion. So I think those clarifications would be very important before we actually vote on the budget. And then I'm not quite sure because on the action, it says that to authorize the distribution, which I'm totally fine with. But then it also says to recommend to the board of directors to approve the draft budget, but there's literally no information in here. I don't in good conscience, I'm not able to do that. So I'm wondering if the maker of the motion would call it recommend to the board of directors and distribute the draft 2024 program budget, because we don't actually have enough information to say, yeah, I approve this draft budget when there's really just not enough information. So I don't know if the maker of the motion.
Let me ask staff about
Okay.
what was shared in terms of what's
So this
available.
was part of, this draft budget was part of the documentation that was
Well, on
provided.
the discussion though, that I just brought up on these items, I don't have enough information on that.
So
part
I
of
think
it.
this is
So,
a great question, because I
Yeah.
think, I don't think that you need to make an actual change to the recommendation. I think what we need to do is make sure that you have a copy of this document. And then any questions that you have, this is the great opportunity for you to speak directly to staff and say, okay, these are the items that we have. One of the things that I'm actually that I have recommended in my capacity as chair is that anytime a board member has a request for anything, that once that board member gets the information, that information is actually going to be distributed to all board members. I think that's best practice. From other boards that I've been at, there should never be one board member that has more information than others. And I think some board members have really great questions. And so it takes a lot of staff time to be able to prepare documents. And so why not make sure that everybody has it? So I apologize. So for me, it's really important that everybody has the same information as we're making decisions. And I think it'll be great. So
I think that's a great idea, by the
so
way.
any questions that you have, feel free to share them with me. I think we have a whole process. You make a lot of requests from me, so I always make sure that the staff has those.
Yeah, I've been adding those on too, but I did actually ask for the AB 805 to be provided to all of the board members. I don't think I saw that happen.
I'll make
I
sure
did that a couple of days ago.
Okay.
In
we'll get it done
preparation of
for-
today, but.
Yeah, we'll get it
okay.
done for the board meeting, but I think, so we have a motion and a second. Anything else that you want to add?
Could we bifurcate that? I just don't feel comfortable with my outstanding questions to be able to say that I approve that. I would say that I'm okay with distributing it, but I'm not okay with approving it. So could we bifurcate those two actions, please?
Sure.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, so the first motion on the floor is to authorize the distribution of the draft 2024 program budget to members, agencies, and other interested parties for review and comment. Please vote. All right, and then so do you want to just? Oh, I'm not voting. Is
Oh,
everybody on?
I'm sorry, I did push it.
You gotta love technology.
I know.
And so do you want to?
And then that passes unanimously. And so then the second is to recommend to the board of directors approval of the draft fiscal year 2024 program budget. In the second.
We bifurcated, so I think it's fine. Okay,
Passes with 5 yeses and 1 no.
okay, fantastic. All right. So I think it's important that the next item on the agenda is item number 7. This is our last report for the day, the Chief Executive Officer Performance Evaluation. Hassan had a prior commitment, so he's not able to join us. And so Victoria is here today to present a summary of the process. Thank you, Victoria. I know that this is there's a great opportunity for us to have a discussion today. And so it's the performance, right? The action is to discuss the performance of the Chief Executive Officer for the period of July 2021 through February 2023, and to consider whether to provide compensation or performance and also recommend performance objectives for 2023. I think, let's start with the first one. I'll just turn it over.
Yeah.
I know we have a time certain, we have 2 minutes, so, but I don't want to, I just want to make sure that we begin the discussion. I know this is going to go to closed session in terms for details, and so there'll be further discussion as a board. I just don't want to, I don't want to table it so if everybody can just give me 5 minutes or so. I know this is an important item that we want to make sure we have a discussion, and I don't want to, anyway.
Thank you.
Victoria.
The executive committee is responsible for advising the board regarding the performance of the CEO and asked to provide input regarding Mr. Akrada's performance during the rating period of July 2021 to February 2023. Mr. Akrada has prepared a summary of his accomplishments, which is shown in attachment 2, which is relative to the FY22 performance objectives, which were approved by the board at its July 2021 meeting, and that is attachment 3. Some of the highlights from the accomplishments include opening the Midcoast Trolley in November of 2021, securing $300 million for Del Mar Bluffs Lausanne corridor from the state, securing another $150 million from US DOT for Otay Mesa East, the largest allocation made nationwide, launching the Youth Opportunity Pass program in May of 2022, advancing the Sandag Social Equity Action Plan, Sandag Equity Action Plan to prioritize outcome goals and strategies and metrics for the plan, created a housing acceleration program to provide tools to local jurisdictions, and last but not least, included $20 million in the state budget for the bond debt for SR 125. Attachment 4 of your report includes the draft 2023 Sandag CEO performance objectives for your consideration. The proposed milestones include utilizing partnerships and collaboration to advance regional priorities, continuing to plan, build, and deliver capital projects, and the objectives also include addressing implementation of the Sandag strategic plan initiatives. As such, the executive committee is asked to discuss the performance of the CEO, to consider any compensation adjustments and/or performance bonuses, and to recommend the performance objectives for the CEO for the calendar year 2023. Based on your feedback today, the board will hear your recommendations at its March 24th meeting. This concludes my report.
Thank you. Any discussion? Do we have any other comments?
Thank you, Chair. We do have some public commenters. We'll start with Catherine Rhodes, and then we'll go to Drew Sharkey.
Hello, this is Catherine Rhodes, and I just want to say I really like Hassan. You know, one of the first things that used to happen to me is I would come to meetings and I would be kicked out. I would sit and, come early, and then staff would have to come and kick me out of meetings because somebody wanted to violate the Brown Act, and everybody allowed it. So the first airport meeting, that happened to me again, and I mentioned it to Hassan. And so what he did is the next meeting that the airport had, he actually came up to me and said, thank you for being here. Thank you for coming. And he made me feel welcome compared to how the culture was before of literally trying to sabotage me. I would come here, drive all the way down here, and then get kicked out of meetings. That was violation of the Brown Act. The other violation would be when you guys as a board voted to not allow people to turn in paperwork at meetings, another violation of the Brown Act. And then Hassan, stopped that too. So the change in the culture of Sandag is for the best. Thank you.
Our next commenter will be Alan, who will be followed by Karina Contreras.
Hello again, board. Throw this in your review process of Director Hassan Arana. He admitted to the board mileage tax is a controlled behavior. Commuters are already paying $6 a gallon gas, will never take that unsafe, time-wasting bus. How many attended today's meeting rode the bus today and every day? 805 bus and shoulder, I mentioned before, emergency lane is too narrow for your silly bus. And yet you got signs plastered all the way down, stopping all the on-ramps until that one bus gets by, squeezing in that emergency lane. Del Mar train tracks, been almost a year. Governor used to set aside 300 million. You're boasting about 300 million. Where is the money? 1940 train fell into the Del Mar Beach. That's been almost 100 years ago. Take action now. How many more filet mignon dinners of taxpayers' hard-earned paychecks are you going to waste? No to any pay raise. Remove the useless director's position, as well as all the other committees that's pushing this nonsense, backdoors his policies without the knowledge of the entire Sandag board. You represent the people instead of this climate action that's going against safety. I yield back.
My apologies, I moved on to the Zoom, but Drew is actually up next, who will be followed by Tyler Collins.
It's all good. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. I come here speaking about the performance of the CEO. There are several questions. One, we have the independent audit or internal independent auditor and a question as to whether we're going to maintain that office. Well, yet that office has uncovered that there were $17,000 in meals expenses, which for military members stationed here in San Diego, they get $59 a day if they're eating all 3 meals. That's about 200 days worth in 1 year, uncovered by the auditor's office. There's a question coming from this organization as to whether they need to maintain that office.
Just for clarification, there is no discussion about that, so, but continue.
Very well. At the same time, the CEO is also using P cards, using taxpayer funds to buy Starbucks for himself and his staff, as well as the auditor's office shows up $3,000, roughly 34 different expenses with zero explanation as to why they were made and why they're spending our money. That should be going to fix potholes, should be going to fix a giant sinkhole that just opened up in the freeway, things like that.
Thank you. Your
Yield
time
back.
has expired, so we'll move on to the
Thank you,
next
ma'am.
person. Thank you. Tyler Collins will be next, and then we'll resume the Zoom commenters with Karina Contreras. I did want to say that the public comment period has now closed since the item is finished being presented. So I'll only be able to take the hands that have been currently raised. But if anybody would like to provide comments, please do feel free to email them to the clerk.
So first, I'd like to thank Rebecca Jones for bringing up the road usage mileage charge. So Sandag is already committed to getting this amended away from the plan. So I would like to shame Nora Vargas and shame the director for now waffling on this in the
Public
meeting.
comment is, this item is specifically on the chief executive.
Yes, this is
officer.
about the director. This is the director. The director is the one who heads this organization. He is responsible for your communications and what you, your relationship with the public. The public feels ashamed that you have, again, tried to milk money from the taxpayer. Californians are some of the hardest hit, particularly in San Diego, with our roads and our gas taxes. We do not need another tax pushed upon us by this administration. So please commit to amending and getting the road usage tax out. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Karina Contreras, who will be followed by Kevin Stevenson.
Yes, hello, my name is Karina Contreras. I am the Transportation Policy Advocate for Climate Action Campaign. And I wanted to speak on this item because whether you personally like the CEO or not, there's been a huge shift in the way that Sandag operates. Previously, prior to Hassan, Sandag was rife with corruption. And now we're seeing a lot more transparency, a lot more public involvement and engagement. And I think that's the right direction to go. So that's all I have to say on the matter. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker will be Kevin Stevenson, who will be followed by Mary.
Yes, hi. Yeah, I just wanted to say, to second what Karina said, I'm glad to see that Sandag is showing more transparency. I frankly like the direction it's going. And I find it really sad that the loudest voices tend to be the fringe minority that is against any and all public transportation spending. And I would like to remind the loudmouths out there that any mileage tax or whatever that you want to throw at Nora and Hassan is not going to happen without being voted on. So rather than try to pretend that you're somehow the majority when you're not, I would say let everyone, speak their minds on this. And frankly, I want more of the direction that Sandag is going in, more transparency, more emphasis on public transit. You can fix roads, sure, but I want a break to the status quo, please. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Mary D, who will be followed by Steve Gelb.
Hi, Mary D here. I want to express my grave concerns about your CEO, and I now openly call on you to fire him and to seek a more moderate replacement. There are many performance-based reasons he should go, including the loss of $1.8 million in revenue via the disconnected toll monitors. There's also the issue of contract creep, where $48 million of work was awarded, but then it more than doubled over a 4-year period to nearly $106 million. Also, his lack of willingness to compromise or authentically gauge and consider other points of view makes him deeply unsuitable for leading this topographically and demographically diverse region. I'm asking you to replace him with someone who is willing and able to work across the aisle, a CEO who will take the needs of everyone in the region into account. Lastly, it is interesting that the chair repeatedly touts the importance of public participation and inclusivity while frequently forgetting about us and then limiting our time to a single minute. Much like the land acknowledgement, we are tired of the tokenism. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Steve Gelb, who will be followed by Mary Burgess. Oh, I'm sorry, Nicole Burgess.
Yeah, I'm Steve Gelb with San Diego 350. Before Hassan Ikrada became Sandag's leader, Sandag failed spectacularly in trying to meet California mandates about greenhouse gases and vehicle miles traveled. The 2017 California Appellate Court rebuked Sandag for submitting a plan that would increase greenhouse gases and VMTs from 2020 to 2050. The court wrote, and I'm quoting, "Lowering vehicles traveled means providing high-quality opportunities to make trips by alternative means to driving alone, such as walking, bicycling, ride-sharing, and public transit." Defenders of the status quo who advocate for highway expansion and less funding for transit disagree fundamentally with the direction taken by California. Let them take their argument to the legislature rather than scapegoating Sandag and its leader. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Nicole Burgess, who will be followed by Terry Cece Carrillo.
Good morning, Executive Committee. My name is Nicole Burgess, and I am an advocate for our little small tiny planet. And I appreciate Hassan and the vision and the work that his staff and his team has done to move us upon the status quo of moving more cars. So we have an extensive highway network, and we're just failing ourselves if we just try to continue to move more cars. And it is time that we move people, and I appreciate the direction that Hassan and his staff is leading us to get more people to have better options and safer options, because the climate crisis is real, and this is we all know that the greatest cause of GHGs is our transportation, and if we don't look at that and make some changes, and all of us have a responsibility on that front. So thank you all for the time to speak on this item.
Excuse me, our next speaker is Terry Cece Carrillo, who will be followed by Neville Magnesi, and Neville will be our final speaker.
Hi, I'm calling as a taxpayer, as a regular person. I find it really offensive that, our Sandag wants to charge us more to be on the road when we haven't even made our public transportation more accessible. I have a son who is legally blind and cannot drive, and public transportation is not accessible. It takes too much time, so we have to drive him back and forth to work. All of the areas around us, We're in Allied Gardens. There's no place for regular people to park and then ride public transportation. All of the parking has been taken away. How do you expect people to ride public transportation if these things aren't provided? And I think we need to work on transportation before we start charging the little people.
Thank you. Our final speaker will be Nevo Magnesi.
Hello, I'd like to second what Karina, Steve, and Nicole said earlier. Under Hassan's leadership, Sandag has gone in the direction, more in the direction that I'd like to see Sandag go. And I think we've been making progress in our region when it comes to reaching our greenhouse gas emissions goals, our equity goals, our Vision Zero goals. Certainly, I think we can go further, farther, faster. And certainly the independent auditor has brought up some concerns, which I think, of course, should be addressed. But in general, Hassan's doing a great job. And I think you should do what you can to keep him. Thank you.
That concludes the public comment. Sure.
Fabulous. All right, any discussion?
Sure, thank you. So I did a little math, and on a bonus, a 7% bonus of Hassan's base salary would be about $29,000 a year, which is a lot of money. And when you consider what's going on in all of the
Wait, is there somewhere there in here that says that there's a 7% bonus?
I saw something about
Can you
7%.
I don't.
I'll have to look back at this. I'll send you an email.
Okay, just for the record, in my end, on the information that is in here, there is no recommendation for a salary increase, right? Or is there?
There's nothing in the item. There is something in his contract that you might have seen referenced that caps any bonus that he could be received to a maximum of 7%. But there's,
Oh, okay, so there's no discussion. So I guess, I think that's a great point, but there is no discussion about a salary increase at this time. So just to make sure that that's on the record, but go ahead.
So in the, we are going to have a closed session. Actually, that was one of the things I was going to recommend. I have it in my thoughts of what we should be doing. I think having a closed session discussion is very important because there have been several things that I personally have not been very happy with. And the speakers that spoke earlier, they like the regional transportation plan, but there are some serious flaws with the behavior of our director that I would like to address within our closed session. And then also the insubordination. So we've had insubordinate behavior, we've had unbecoming behavior, and then also some very, very tough discussions of how he's treated, honestly, some board members like myself, very combative. So these, I want to make sure that we are going to address these in closed session.
Wait, so are you, is that?
Well, my motion would be that we move to a closed session, not right now, but with the full board so that we could all have our discussion heard before we really talk about, all of the, like moving.
That's the recommendation I made before. Go ahead. So we have a motion.
In that case, I'll make the second.
Okay, so we have a motion in a second. Please vote. Unless anybody has any additional discussion. Okay.
Thank you. That motion does pass unanimously with those numbers.
Fantastic. All right, so we did it. We're so almost did it. 10:31, so I apologize. All right, so with that, this concludes our meeting. I hope to see you at the next meeting, which is our board meeting at 9 a.m. Next. All right. Oh, and if anyone needs a copy of the back, we'll make sure that we will have access to them. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming.